Wow, we doing it good. Hey.
Right now, everyone is talking about how unstoppable the Indiana Fever looks. The highlights are electric. The chemistry looks real. The energy in that building is the kind you can feel through a screen. But here's the question nobody seems to want to answer. What happens when it stops working? Because at some point, it will. The regular season is a grind. Defenses adjust. Players get tired. Leads evaporate. And when that moment of truth arrives, everything is going to come down to one person. We'll get to that. First, let's talk about what's actually happening inside this training camp, because what's unfolding is far more significant than the media is giving it credit for.
I like what I'm seeing, I do. I think she has a lot of potential. I wasn't totally loving what KK did in that set. She kind of got worked by the spin move from that practice player. And I did want to show you guys something that was going viral, and it is a one-handed pass from Caitlin over to Maisha Hines-Allen, who looks...
The Fever are sending shockwaves through the league. The narrative coming into this season was predictable. Sports media loves a simple story, and the simple story was that the Indiana Fever were going to quietly run it back, maybe improve by a few games, and keep developing their young core around their franchise superstar. Manageable expectations, safe predictions. Comfortable takes. What's actually happening is something completely different. From the first day of training camp, the intensity inside that facility has been operating at a frequency that is genuinely alarming for the rest of the WNBA. We're not talking about the polished, everyone's smiling for the camera version of training camp that teams usually put on display. We're talking about a group of players pushing each other in drills, competing with ferocity that suggests they spent the entire off-season stewing over last year's shortfalls.
Offensive sets that are always fun to watch. Positive vibes, positive vibes. All right, Lexi 3-ball, that's what we want to see more of this season. Sophie at the wing. It's her spot. Oh, and the coveted Caitlin Clark 3-ball. If there is anything you guys want to see, please pop down in the comments. Don't hesitate to ask. That's why I put some Justine Pissott highlights in this.
The swagger is back, the focus is sharp, and the tactical execution on display suggests that head coach Stephanie White has a roster locked in on a very specific, very serious mission. The media narratives have been swirling all off-season, questions about chemistry, questions about depth, questions about whether this team can survive the brutal physicality of full WNBA schedule, but the evidence emerging from these early camp sessions is answering those questions loudly, and clearly this is not a team building for the future anymore. The future is now. The Indiana Fever are hunting, and the rest of the league needs to understand that before opening night arrives. When you break down the raw footage coming out of those sessions, the chemistry between players, the individual development leaps, the competitive intensity burning through every single drill, one thing becomes unmistakably clear. The talent in that locker room has reached a level that should genuinely terrify any defensive coordinator sitting down to build a game plan against them. And it all starts with the undeniable gravitational center of this entire operation.
Some wing action. 1, there's 2, 3 in a row, 4 in a row, 5 in a row. Speaking of thirst traps,
if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment below telling me which Indiana Fever player you're most excited to watch this season. I read every single one. Now let's get into it. Caitlin Clark is playing on a different planet. Everyone already knows about the logo threes. Everyone knows about the scoring records, the passing numbers, the way she single-handedly shifted the cultural conversation around women's basketball. That part of the story has been told 1,000 times. But what's materializing inside this training camp is something that even her biggest supporters might not have fully anticipated. A completely evolved version of her game built around something far more dangerous than just buckets. Caitlin Clark is no longer simply reading defenses. She is manipulating them. She is bending entire defensive shells to her will before the ball even moves, using eye-fake subtle hesitations and deceptive weight shifts to create situations that defenders have no realistic answer for.
Decent footwork, lateral movement. Had her arms up, didn't make that pass easy. Oh, okay.
Her floor vision has reached a level of sophistication where she's not just seen the play that's developing, she's seen the play 2 or 3 reads ahead, like a chess player who already knows which pieces you're going to move before you touch them. The moment that crystallizes perfectly was a one-handed pass to Myisha Hines-Allen that immediately went viral across social media. On the surface, it looks like an impressive highlight. But when you actually slow it down and study what's happened mechanically, it's one of the most revealing plays you'll see in any practice setting this year. Clark identifies the weak side, helped defender cheating toward the paint. She stalls her primary defender with a subtle hesitation dribble. She manipulates the passing lane with her eyes, freezing the rotation. And then, in a fraction of a second, she whips a high-velocity, one-handed laser through a passing window so small that most point guards in this league wouldn't even see it, let alone attempt it. Hines-Allen's reaction after catching it tells you everything. She looks genuinely stunned, and she's a 1 on her team. Play encapsulates exactly why defending Caitlin Clark in the pick and roll has become a mathematical nightmare with no clean solution. If you blitz her aggressively, she's already 2 steps ahead of your rotation, finding the roller or the weak side corner shooter before your help defense can recover. If you play drop coverage to protect the paint, you're handing the most lethal deep-range shooter on the planet exactly the daylight she needs to pull up from logo distance and make you regret that choice for the rest of the game. There is no safe option. Every defensive decision has a consequence, and she's the one collecting on all of them. And then there's the pure shooting, the kind that doesn't just score points, it psychologically dismantles the team trying to guard it. Watching her warm up, working through ball handling drills with weighted equipment, meticulously calibrating her release mechanics before a session even formally begins, you see the obsessive dedication underneath the natural talent. Then she steps out well beyond the arc and drops 5 consecutive deep threes with a really so quick in a form so clean that it barely looks like effort. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, each one splitting the net with the same mechanical precision as the last. Here's why that matters beyond the obvious. When a player has a proven legitimate ability to pull up from 30 feet without breaking stride or sacrificing release quality, defenses cannot afford to give her any space at all. They have to extend their pressure all the way to the logo, which creates massive driving lanes, compromises rotation coverage, and forces defenders into impossibly steep closeout angles. Those angles lead to blow-bys. Those blow-bys lead to defensive collapses. Those collapses lead to wide-open looks for everyone else on the floor. Caitlin Clark isn't just producing points. She is breaking the foundational geometry of basketball defense, and she's doing it with a confidence that spreads like wildfire through the rest of the Indiana Fever roster. But here's the thing, as dominant as that our narrative is, the most important development coming out of this training camp might not be about Caitlin Clark at all. Justine Pat is the X-factor nobody is talking about. In the modern WNBA, one of the harshest realities every front office has to navigate is the brutally unforgiving nature of roster limits. 12 spots. That's it. Every single one of those spots carries roster management weight, salary cap implications, and long-term strategic meaning. Finding a way to develop young talent without burning a full roster spot is a chess move that separates smart organizations from reactive ones. The Indiana Fever made a quietly brilliant decision by securing second-round draft pick Justine Pat in a developmental slot. On paper, second-round picks face an enormous uphill climb just to survive to opening day, let alone contribute meaningfully during there. The odds are stacked against them from the jump. But the Fever's coaching staff looked past those odds and saw something in her that was worth protecting. What they saw was a player standing at 6 feet 4 inches with a wingspan that stretches imagination, and a defensive toolkit that fits perfectly into where the modern WNBA is heading. The league has moved aggressively towards switch-heavy, perimeter-oriented defensive schemes, and in that environment, a tall wing who can legitimately guard multiple positions, contest shots at the rim, disrupt passing lanes without getting lost on perimeter is one of the most coveted assets a team can have. Pat checks every one of those boxes, and she's doing it with a poise and physicality that suggests she understands the assignment completely. Watch her defensive possessions in practice, and the thing that immediately jumps out is not raw athleticism, it's intelligence. She reads screening actions before they develop. She executes switches without hesitation or confusion. She gets her arms up at precisely the right moment to turn a makeable shot into a difficult one-on-one particular defensive repetition. She's matched up against a skilled practice player, and instead of panicking or conceding ground away many tall players do and forced to guard quicker opponents on the perimeter, she stays low, maintains her balance, and uses every inch of that wingspan to make the contest as uncomfortable as possible. Her post defense tells an equally promising story. Opposing teams will inevitably try to drag her down to the low block to test her strength and her footwork, hunting a mismatch they hope exists. What they're finding instead is a player with solid lower body stability, disciplined verticality, and the ability to absorb contact without folding. She's not perfect, no developmental player ever is, but the raw potential on display is the kind that has developmental coaches reaching for their notepads. If she continues to sharpen her defensive awareness and proves she can knock down the perimeter shot with consistency, the Indiana Fever will have a prototypical 3-and-D wing coming off the bench who can completely alter the second unit's energy. Keeping Justine Pad in the building this season isn't just a feel-good story about a long-shot prospect getting a chance. It's a calculated investment in roster depth that championship-caliber teams understand is absolutely essential. The Fever aren't just building a starting five, they're building a machine with multiple moving parts. And Pat might end up being one of the most important ones. But depth and talent only take you so far. Culture drives everything else, and there's one new arrival who is reshaping this team's culture in ways that are impossible to ignore. Raven Johnson just flipped the script on everyone. The sports media spent months trying to build a dramatic narrative out of the college history between Raven Johnson and Caitlin Clark. The rivalry angle, the tension angle, though what happens when two competitors end up in the same locker room angle. It made for compelling content, it generated clicks, and it was almost entirely disconnected from reality. From the moment Raven Johnson stepped in front of a microphone as a member of the Indiana Fever, she methodically dismantled every piece of that narrative with calm, composed, overwhelmingly positive energy. She spoke about her new teammates with genuine warmth and specific appreciation, singling out veterans like Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi Hull for mentorship they've already extended to her. She talked about asking relentless questions to understand the system, about learning the nuances of professional basketball from players who have lived through the battles she's still preparing to face. The maturity in that approach from a young player entering an entirely new environment is genuinely remarkable. And then she picks up the ball and steps onto the court, and that warm, bubby personality completely disappears. When Raven Johnson is between those lines in a defensive setting, she transforms into something opposing ball handlers genuinely do not want to see coming. She described her own defensive identity in the most accurate, most unsettling way possible. She called herself a gnat on the ball. That description is perfect because a gnat doesn't care about your size, your status, your reputation, or your draft position. A gnat is relentless, constantly in your space, disrupting your rhythm, making every dribble feel slightly less comfortable than it should be. She doesn't just accept defensive assignments, she hunts them. She takes immense personal pride in creating live ball turnovers, in ripping possessions away from the opposing offense and handing her teammates fresh opportunities to attack. From a roster construction standpoint, this defensive profile solves one of the most persistent structural problems in the Indiana Fever's game plan. Caitlin Clark is one of the greatest defensive players in the history of this league, but she is not a lockdown defender. She never has, and nobody should realistically expect her to be. Asking her to expend massive physical energy fighting through screens and guarding the quickest players on opposing rosters every single night would be a slow drain on the explosiveness and mental clarity she needs to orchestrate the offense at the highest level. By placing a relentless point of attack stopper like Raven Johnson in the backcourt alongside her, the Fever can strategically shield their superstar from that defensive burden. Clark conserves her legs. She stays out of foul trouble. She arrives on the offensive end fresh and dangerous every single possession. Raven Johnson thrives in the chaos that championship basketball inevitably creates. She embraces the dirty work, the gritty moments, the defensive stops that don't show up in highlight packages but absolutely determine the outcome of close games. And her presence is already reshaping the culture and competitive energy of the second unit in ways that extend far beyond statistics. But culture isn't just built by new arrivals. It's anchored by people who are already here, the veterans who hold this roster together. There's a reason teams with generational talent still fall short of championships. Young players with unlimited potential will always find ways to light up a box score. But the moments when a season actually gets decided, overtime games in July, hostile road environments, back-to-back stretches where everyone's body hurts and focus starts drifting, those moments belong to veterans.